On today's Locked On Texan podcast, day 2 of joint practices against the Miami Dolphins, more offensive line concerns, while now it is time to really get concerned because of the front five's production or lack thereof.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Friday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Just post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Remember, terms and conditions apply. I am your Texan football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. Of course, I'm joined by none other than Texans beat reporter, credential media member for Sports Illustrated, covering the Houston Texans, Cody Davis. If you are new to the Locked On Texan podcast, thank you for stopping on by to talk Texan with us. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texan podcast wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. If you are one of our returning players from the Himalayas, thank you for coming back for another episode. Again, while we cover your team every day. Nico Collins had a good practice, catching 2 big passes, one for a TD while being covered by Noah Ibangwane, one of the cornerbacks for the Miami Dolphins. Excuse me if I butchered that name, but we'll get into that later, the day that Nico Collins had. CJ Stroud hits Tegan Quatoriano for a touchdown during 7-on-7 drills. So it's good to see the sophomore tight end get back in on some of the action, as he's missing a good amount of time, actually. But between the penalties, the missed assignments, the interior offensive line had a rough day throughout day 2 of the joint practice, blocking the Dolphins' defensive front. So I think it's important that we start there. Cody, walk us through what day 2 of joint practice looked like for Houston as they prepare for Saturday's preseason game.
Well, before I dive into the offensive line, I do want to mention that day 16 of training camp, the energy wasn't there. And I get it, because at this stage of training camp, players and coaches themselves, they are just ready to start with the 2023 campaign. I remember this time last year and the year before that, going into that second preseason game, it's basically the dog days of training camp, because everybody is ready for these games to really start counting so you can truly see what you are working with. However, the one thing that was consistent for the Houston Texans day 16 of training camp was that offensive line, and that was not a good thing. John, ever since the injuries to Scott Quisenberry and Titus Howard, this offensive line has not looked good. And keep in mind, I was one of the ones that looked at the Houston Texans starting 5 and thinking to myself, man, this can definitely be a top 15 offensive line in the league. I remember saying that during OTAs. I remember saying that during mandatory minicamp. I remember saying it through the first 7 days of training camp. However, day 7, Scott Quisenberry goes down. A couple days after that, Titus Howard goes down. If we have truly seen the impact that has made on that offensive line. Now, before I get into the negatives, I do want to mention this. In terms of run blocking, they do a decent job. And that's not surprising, because one of the biggest things that I was high on when I looked at the addition of Green last year, it was literally due to his ability to be a very reliable run blocker. Once again, at Texas A&M, this is a young man who recorded a run blocking grade of over 70 according to Pro Football Focus. And he has showcased that same ability here through his first 2 years with the Houston Texans. However, in terms of pass protection, he still needs a lot of help. And the same thing with Juice Scruggs. Now, when you look at the right side, I'm not too concerned. Yes, George Fant looked terrible. Yes, Austin Deculus looked terrible as well. However, I'm not really too concerned about the right side of that offensive line, because there's one thing that's going to happen come either week 1 or week 2 of the regular season, and that's going to be the return of Titus Howard. Now, I understand he's not going to be, scratching scratching the surface of a Pro Bowl caliber Titus Howard that we are all used to seeing, because I'm pretty sure it's going to take him some time to get back into the rhythm and being the player that he was prior to that hand injury. However, at least 50% of Titus Howard got to be better than what the Houston Texans are rolling with right now. However, my biggest concern is that interior. Of course, I'm talking about Green and I'm talking about Juice Squirrels. As a matter of fact, following day 2 of joint practices, I had an opportunity to ask Coach D'Amico Ryans about his evaluation of this offensive line, and then Brooks Cabina of the Houston Chronicle followed that up with what is the concern level with the interior itself.
Our offensive line is still working through things. They still have things to improve on, not only the offensive line, just as a team. I think each position, not to single out one group, each position has something to improve upon. And that's what training camp is all about. And guys are heading in the right direction. You do see guys getting better each day, and that'll continue to be a process all throughout the year. I think interior pressure is something that really stops all offenses, right? You have to be solid in the middle of your offense, right? You want to be solid in the middle of your defense. You want to be able to threaten the pocket as quickly as possible. So there's a competition right there. Who's going to stand up and make the play? And we have to be, really good in the middle of our offense. As a center, the guard positions, back stepping up, and protection as well. Guys have to be solid there.
The Houston Texans offense as a whole did struggle against the Miami Dolphins, especially in their passing game. However, a majority of the struggles that we saw was due to the inabilities of this offensive line.
These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Super simple, super easy. Add your job, then add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skill set and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. So again, make sure you check out LinkedIn Jobs. When you visit LinkedIn Jobs to post your job for free, make sure you visit linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back in, Locked On Texan listeners and viewers, to this Friday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast. Thank you for stopping by. Today, I think it was very important to talk about Nico Collins, a guy that I think we just don't talk about enough. And I think mainly because I've said it before. Well, I've said it before. Nico doesn't get a lot of the targets and opportunities maybe during camp, and he hasn't had it in that one preseason game, right? And so for Nico, he can kind of get lost in the shuffle. But guys, don't misunderstand what a 6'4" wide receiver that can run a 4.45 can do for your team. On Thursday, made a couple of big plays for Houston, and the hype right now is centered around Tank Dell. But Nico had a good day for Houston in this offense, who also, for the receiving group overall, I think they did a better job. Cody, stop me if I'm wrong, for kind of making up on some of the drops and some of the opportunities that they had on day 1 of joint practice. And so looking at Nico Collins, the kind of day he had, what should Houston Texan fans expect from this third-year wide receiver?
Well, before I get into that, I do want to mention that Nico not only had a great day 16, but he just had a pretty solid joint practice performance against Miami in general, because I also go back to Wednesday. He had a nice catch on Xavier Howard. And I look at Nico Collins and I can't help but to get excited. As a matter of fact, if there is one player that I am most excited to see for this upcoming season, it's Nico alone, because let's just break down a couple things we've been saying about Nico Collins. First and foremost, let's just look at the quarterbacks that he has caught passes from. Kyle Allen, Jeff Driscoll, Tyrod Taylor, and Davis Mills. Out of all four of those quarterbacks, the best quarterback that he had an opportunity to play with is Davis Mills. And that's not saying much because that goes into part of the reason why we have a rookie quarterback starting for the second consecutive preseason game in CJ Stroud. So you look at the quarterback play, then you also got to take a look at the fact that all four of those quarterbacks, not only was they play subpar, but a lot of times they was looking at Brandon Cooks and Brandon Cooks only, especially Davis Mills. And that was one of the knocks that we had against Davis Mills through his first two seasons. However, CJ Stroud, as of right now, I know a lot of people are saying that Tank Dell is his favorite target, but I will go on a limb and say right now I think he has two favorite targets, and they're about what and what. And that's not only Tank Dell, but it's also Nico Collins. And I truly do believe that playing with CJ Stroud, playing with a better offensive coordinator that's going to put him in the best position to succeed, you're automatically going to get a better version of Nico. And not only that, the biggest knock against Nico has been his durability. They say the best ability is availability. And as of right now, Nico Collins has battled with several knick-knack injuries. You can't predict whether or not this is going to be an injury-plagued season for Nico. However, when I look at the first 16 days of training camp, looking at him win his one-on-one battles against Xavier Howard, look at him on countless occasions win his battles against Steven Nelson and Derek Stingley Jr. Like, just those three names alone lets you know that Nico Collins is going to be something special entering his third season. And I'm not the only one who believes that.
And Nico, throughout camp, he's shown that he's a big play threat. Deep passes down the field. He's made a lot of big-time plays in practice, and we're expecting him to do the same thing when it comes to the games.
My favorite part about watching Nico Collins over these last 2 days, John, this wide receiving core has been subpar at best. Wednesday, couple drop passes. On yesterday, the offense had a very terrible time trying to find their rhythm. Like I mentioned in the first segment, majority of that was due to the inabilities of that offensive line. However, it seems like when there's going to be moments throughout the season where the offense is going to struggle, Nico Collins is going to be that safety blanket to kind of get things going. And that's what I saw over these last 2 days. And that's definitely what you want to see out of Nico Collins. I'm not about to sit here and argue and fight and say that, whether or not he's about to take the helm as wide receiver number one. It will be good, trust me. But he is definitely going to take a step forward for the Houston Texans in 2023. A better version of Nico Collins means you're going to see a better version of CJ Stroud. A better version of CJ Stroud means you're going to see a better offense production in general. Better offensive production in general for the Houston Texans mean you're probably going to get a couple more wins for this upcoming season.
And the thing about Nico is Nico has the ability to be your possession receiver as well as be a receiver that can make a play 20 plus yards down the field, right? We've seen it in small samples going back to his rookie year, him and Davis being able to connect a time or two here, a time or two there, going back to his sophomore year, more moments. But overall, he's able to be the guy on 3rd and 8 because of his body and his ability to box out the defender. Just kind of throw it in his vicinity. He go get it and move the chains, right? Move the chains. He's also a guy that what we've seen in camp, and if you pay attention to the miscues of the offense last year, you would have saw more of those opportunities. But he can also be the player deep, man. I think he has done a very good job of improving on his ability to get open.
Matter of fact,
as a route runner.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but the play that he had yesterday against Howard, that was the perfect example of him using his route running ability in order to get open. And I believe it was
people forget about his 4.5, like the 40. He has some speed on him, guys.
How many times did I come on this show? I think one day last week I came on the show and was like, look, Nico Collins literally used his speed to beat Derek Stingley Jr.
Yeah. No. Nico still has some speed. And honestly, from what he was doing when he came out of college to now, he looks so much more, and for his size, a little twitchier, but he looks faster. He also looks leaner as well. So you're looking at a player going into his third year, third offensive coordinator, third head coach. We know the deal. He needs those opportunities. And we look at an offense that we're not 100% sure how many attempts that they'll take downfield, how many of those explosive plays that they'll have throughout the course of a season. Nico needs to be the guy that when they need a big play, we're calling your number because we know you can do it. You've done it against Xavier Howard. You've done it against Derek Stingley during practice. At times last year, you did it against different corners. Didn't get the opportunity to get the ball, to get the stats, but you've been able to beat a corner deep. So now I just kind of want to see it all come together for that young man.
With our game this week, we'll play all our players. Will play. All our players will see time in the game, and that's how we'll go about it. CJ will go out first, again, as he did last week, and we'll judge the game as it goes along.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this latest installment of Locked On Texans. Tomorrow is preseason game number 2 for the Houston Texans. They will face off against the Miami Dolphins inside NRG Stadium. I believe kickoff is at 3 o'clock. John, one of the things that I'm looking forward to in this second preseason game, of course, the biggest thing, the ongoing development of CJ Stroud. And for me personally, it's not even what we're going to see, whether you're watching it on TV or you going to the stadium itself. For me, it's going to be what CJ and Coach Nico Collins, what they're going to say after the game. Because following yesterday's training camp, we had an opportunity to talk to Dameon Pierce. And Pierce was talking about some of the things that CJ Stroud is working through, especially in terms of the playbook. And, he said, look, CJ has done a really good job studying the playbook. He know his plays. He know where everybody's supposed to be. He said, but the one thing I want to see him improve on is his play calling. He said a lot of times when they in the huddle, he'll get tongue-tied trying to remember, how to say a certain play and to put everybody in their position. And, he talked about how important this game is going to be on Saturday because it gives him an opportunity to go out there and try to improve his play calling in real time. And John, that is something that's very important and probably one of the most overlooked, yet one of the most important attributes for a rookie quarterback in order to get accustomed to playing this game on the NFL level. And I think the longer CJ plays on Saturday, I think that's definitely going to improve his ability to be a better play caller come the start of the regular season.
Yeah, man. Tua, Tua did that at joint practice. Was it early this week? Was it on Wednesday?
Yeah, it was on Wednesday. He did it with the media.
He did the play call and asked the media to say it back to him. Boy, I wish I was there. I know I would have got it wrong. But yeah, I like that. But getting comfortable at all of the smaller things, right? You want to see your quarterback do that. This is preseason. I think there's a few of us who believes Houston has a shot to actually win this division.
It's a few, all right.
It's a few, but this year isn't a New York Jets type of year where you traded for Aaron Rodgers. It isn't a Buffalo Bills type of year where you have Josh Allen, the guy that you are expecting to at least make an AFC championship game. Same with the Baltimore Ravens and what they've been doing with their franchise. For Houston, this is about just building off of what was going on the past couple of years. And now that CJ Stroud is your quarterback, you expect the baby bumps, you expect the ups and downs, but you do want to see him get better at the small things. So that way, when he's in year 10, he's thriving. And a lot of that stuff is second nature. One of the things that I'm ready to look forward to is Dameon Pierce playing in live action football. And I believe that this is a good test for him because there won't be a Titus Howard. The offensive line interior, at least the interior offensive line, they've been struggling. So I want to see that adversity coming from him because we've deemed him as a 1,000-yard rusher. We've deemed him as the running back for the future, rightfully so. But how can he impact the game when it's not that pretty? So you know what that calls for. How can Houston in this offense and Bobby Slowick and Dameon Pierce himself get involved offensively in that passing game. So I want to see that because we talk a lot about CJ taking what the defense gives him. He's going to be going up against a defense with Vic Fangio, who, is going to make things a little bit difficult for you. So if your running back is open, dump it off to him and allow him to make a move in open space. And overall, I want to see Nico. I want to see Nico purposely involved, the same way we saw Tank Dell involved when Davis Mills was out on that field in that first preseason game, against the New England Patriots. So I want to see Nico. I want to see Nico have an opportunity to prove why he's this team number one receiver.
Another thing that I want to look at Saturday is how the secondary kind of bounce back after a subpar practice day. I mean, they had moments. As a matter of fact, I think Stingley did record an interception doing 7-on-7 play. And not only him, I think Desmond King also recorded an interception as well. However, when they switched over to 11-on-11, Tyreek Hill, my God, I'm talking about he ran through the Texans secondary. So I just really want to see how are they going to bounce back after some adversity, because if you think about it, going all the way back to day one of training camp, almost every single day I have been, raving about this Houston Texans defense on all three levels. And the front seven did their job against Miami on yesterday. Don't get it twisted. As a matter of fact, Jonathan Grenard was one of the few defensive linemen who ended joint practice on yesterday with a sack. However, like I mentioned, Tyreek Hill, using that speed, ran through the Texans secondary. So I just want to see, what type of adjustments they're going to make. And of course, with this being, only preseason game number 2, as a matter of fact, Mike McDaniel didn't even say whether or not Tua is going to play, but he did say he does expect majority of his players to play. So, if Tyreek goes out there on the field, please make sure to keep an eye on how the Texans secondary try to contain Tyreek Hill, even if it's just for a drive.
How can they beat that speed, right? I mean, that's something we talked about earlier in the week.
Yeah,
how can
they used it. And I don't know, maybe the communication wasn't there. That's the only thing I could think of, because I go back to Wednesday where
Tyreek Hill beats everybody.
They contained the speed except for that 160-yard bomb he did catch. But the communication was there. The communication was there, and they did a better job Wednesday. But like I mentioned, maybe it's because the energy was kind of off with everybody on yesterday. The communication wasn't there, but John, at the end of the day, like you said, Tyreek Hill
eventually beats everybody. It's okay. But again, what's their counter to their speed? And for Bobby Sloyd, what's your counter to Vic Fangio? We're talking about CJ Stroud, and how can this offensive coordinator, right, who's in a room with Shane Day and Bill Lazor, how can they counterpunch back to Vic Fangio's defense? So I want to see that as well on Saturday. Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texan. Also give us a follow, subscribe, like, comment on YouTube as well. And follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
Oh, John finally stopped using that dial-up internet service, huh?
All right, guys. I'm sorry. I apologize. It was a neighborhood outage going on, but, we're here.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at Cody Davis _24. Once again, that's Cody COTY DAVIS _24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.
Make sure you check me out this Saturday as I do my Bleacher Report post-game reaction.